Thank you very much for joining us this evening. This is the Aspen City Council work session for November 14th, 2022. Tonight's agenda has two items. We have a couple board and commission interviews, and then we have an affordable housing strategic plan update. We are going to start off with the board and commission interviews. I did want to just make note that Councilor Mesereau is not here this evening in person. He is online, but not feeling well, so his participation may be limited tonight. With that, we will go ahead and get started. Our first board we are going to look at is the APCHA board. We have one applicant for the alternate position. That's to be interviewed this evening. His name is Charlie Schmidt, and Charlie is joining us on Zoom. Charlie, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
We got you. Thank you so much. Thank you, as always, to those that put their name in for application to any one of our volunteer boards and commissions. As I always say, our volunteer boards and commissions are truly one of the things that make Aspen so special and operate with that collaborative ethic between our community, our council, and our governance. So thank you for your participation. Charlie, my first question to you is about the roles, responsibilities, and the meeting dates for APCHA. Have you reviewed those, and do you have any conflict with any of those items?
As far as I know, I don't have any conflicts. I work for CoA and my schedule is pretty open. I work with 3 to 6 year olds and have a pretty open season here.
Thank you, Charlie. It says here that you've resided in Pickens County for the past year, and that you're actually somewhat of a Coloradan. Is that correct?
Yeah. I moved here I'm 29 years old. I moved here when I was 8 years old in 2001, and I've been in Denver for the majority of that time. I have recently found housing out in Aspen and have wanted to become more involved here.
Well, this definitely is one way to dive in head first or jump in with both feet. I'm going to let other council members start off with any questions that they may have for you, and I'll look this direction if I can. John, any questions for Charlie?
Just a couple quick ones. Is ski instructor your only job?
So I ski instruct in the winter, and I am a preschool teacher in the summers. So I fill either summer camp roles or substitute roles in the summer.
Great. And the other question I had for you, have you ever attended a city council meeting or a county commissioners meeting?
I would love to tell you that I have, but I have not.
That's not super important. I was just curious. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah. Again, thank you, Charlie. Welcome to the community, and thanks for your contributions. You know, the APCHA board, as much as anything, really deals with policies and enforcement and code languages, as opposed to perhaps construction or new projects. They are not in the development business. Have you read the housing guidelines or attended any APCHA board meetings?
I have not attended any APCHA board meetings. I am pretty familiar with this type of language as I have my master's in public policy from the University of Denver. So I don't consider myself far out from this type of language and policy making, but I can honestly say that I have not been to an APSHA board meeting before.
Okay. And then matters like the urban growth boundary, do you think that all housing should be built within the urban growth boundary, or would you like to see the urban growth boundary changed?
I think it makes sense to look at how the Roaring Fork Valley is changing. So to stick with something in a concrete form, I don't ever think is the necessarily the policy solution. I know that policy change comes incrementally. To say that I think that it should stay the same I wouldn't want to stick myself in that category.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie. Ward?
I'm going to start off with the lighthearted one to start with. You know, this is an Avs town, and your email address is Red Wings Hockey.
That is very true, and I am an avid Avs fan for sure. I have stuck with my my deep Midwestern email address, despite how it might look at a city council meeting, which I understand might knock a few points off for me.
Okay, extra credit. Who are the Avs playing tonight?
Oh, they are playing the Blues.
There you go. Ding, 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 ding.
Knocks on Wednesday.
Right. Are you familiar with Home Track?
That is the system by which it's like the dashboard or the system by which APSHA is being run through. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's a computerized system that I've been going online with for a few years. Are you familiar with, Rachel already asked one of my questions, that you have not been to an APSHA meeting, but do you know when the meetings are, and is there anything in your schedule to prevent you from attending the meetings?
I'm sorry, would you ask that again? I just couldn't quite hear the tail end of that.
Do you know when the APSHA meetings are, and is there anything in your schedule that would conflict with you attending the APSHA board meetings?
I am aware of the meeting times, and I, to my knowledge, have no conflicts.
Okay. I appreciate your willingness to serve. Are you familiar with the thing, right sizing and empty bedrooms?
I certainly know what an empty bedroom is, but as far as what it means for the policy, for APSHA policy, I am not particularly.
Well, I'm sure if you get appointed that Rachel is going to be more than happy and Matthew are going to be more than happy to bring you up to speed on that. Again, thank you for your ability and willingness to serve, and I'm happy to hear that you are an Avs fan.
Charlie, a couple more questions. And Skippy, go right ahead if you can.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me join remotely, guys. A tough 24 hours. I'm just curious, Charlie, either through your knowledge of the historical context or your own personal beliefs, who is the APSHA program here to serve and who may it not be here to serve?
Sure. From some of the reading that I've done, and certainly part of my personal beliefs, APSHA is here to serve the underserved, those who are in need of housing, those who work in the community and may not be able to own one of the multi-million-dollar homes in the community. That's one of the reasons why, and I live in APSHA housing, and that's one of the reasons why I reached out to see how I can participate and better learn what APSHA's mission is, because I feel it from a personal perspective. I understand that I still do come from a place of privilege, but I know that there are many people who, without APSHA housing, would not be able to be in the Roaring Fork Valley.
Yeah, thank you. And then I've forgotten my second question. I'm having a rough night.
Who is it to not serve?
No, he answered that question. I was going to ask a second question, but I can't recall what it was now. Sorry.
It's okay. We'll come back to you if you put your hand back up. Charlie, a couple questions from me to follow up with you. One, where did you hear about the opening for this board?
To be completely honest, I listen to a ton of public radio, and this is a bit of a monologue here, but it kind of goes to my mission here. Is I just hear so much of the division on a national level, and I know that where my heart is in service and in participating in the community, and therefore I just started kind of scouring. I kind of looked around at what was available as far as openings on committees, commissions, and boards. I feel that I'm in a position to voice somewhat of a unique perspective and to help give voice to those who need it. So I was able to look online and see that there was an opening on the APSHA board for an alternate, and housing really speaks to me. It's really the core of community and service. So that's kind of where it came about.
And then my last question for you is, are there any specific APSHA, affordable housing, or housing-related topics or issues that you are seeking to participate in or influence? Just a few topics that you're interested in. That could be anything from equity to availability, that kind of thing.
Sure. One of the things that I am most passionate about, or have found to be most interesting within APSHA, is the for lack of a better term, is the housing for sale, that people can own houses through APSHA. And please help put parameters around that if I'm speaking that wrong. But it's the idea that people can find lifelong housing in Aspen and in Pitkin County through APSHA. So it is a short-term solution for someone who might, in my position, might be a ski instructor who comes seasonally, or more my position where I am a ski instructor who's trying to join this community more full-time. And so I'm just really interested in the different ways that APSHA is creating those opportunities.
Thank you so much. Any follow-ups? Rachel or John?
I just wanted to thank you for applying, David. Charlie. Thanks.
Thank you all so much for your time.
Charlie, one more bonus question. What does APSHA stand for?
APSHA stands for the Aspen Pitkin County Housing Authority.
There you go.
There you go.
All right.
Charlie, we thank you so much, obviously, for your application on this board or commission, and we will be letting you know soon. This is a joint appointment, so it goes through the county as well, and we'll be letting you know soon. And if there is any opportunity that you do not get appointed to this board, I highly want to encourage you to apply for other boards and commissions that we have need on as well. And we'll have another round of interviews at the start of next year in January. But we will be in touch with you very soon, Charlie.
Great. Again, I just want to thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That was our applicant for the APCHA joint position. Again, it is an alternate position. I'll check back with council members in just a little bit.
And
Yep.
That was the one where Chris Council had previously applied and interviewed, but we held off since this opening had not really been advertised. It came open fairly suddenly when David Logren resigned.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. And we'll move on to our next board. Our next board is the Election Commission. There are 2 regular member positions open, and we have 1 member reapplying. David Hyman is here. Come on up. Those microphones should be on, yes, but you do need to kind of, keep it in front of you. David, good to see you.
Thanks.
Start off by just saying hello. Nice to see you. Secondly, thank you for all that you've done in the community for many years and your continued participation, your continued desire to participate on the Election Commission. You obviously, why don't you start off by telling us, how long have you been a member of the Election Commission?
I think it's been about 6 years.
So with that, you are fully versed in the roles and responsibilities of the Election Commission and have no conflict with those coming up in the near future?
No.
Thank
Or
you.
yes and no.
Yes and no.
Well, you asked, yeah.
I'll let other council members ask any questions of you at this time and maybe come back to me. I'll look down it this way and go to John first.
I just want to start by saying thanks for being part of our election commission, and I think everybody in this room probably knows that Colorado is held up as the example of how elections should be run across the nation. So thanks for participating in that. My only question is, because I think you're obviously very qualified for this position, is are you aware of any relation to, wasn't it a David Hyman that helped found this town?
Yes.
Well, David didn't found the town, but he was a mine owner, and I am no relation.
Okay.
Richard.
I also would echo the thanks for participating in the past and reapplying, so appreciate that. If anything, we hear across the country of election officials deciding not to do it anymore because of various pressures, so really appreciate you stepping up. All I would ask is, do you have any suggestions, whether you want to offer them in public or later in writing, for improvements to the process? That would be the only question I would have, since you have such familiarity.
No, I don't have it. I think the process is really efficient and well-run. The clerk does a great job, and,
Okay.
I don't think it's...
Very good, thank you.
Ward?
She's smiling back there. Thank you, David. I know what it's like to serve on the Election Commission, and I wish that we would have an applicant from a different, perhaps more conservative Republican for balance, but I fully support you to continue serving, and thank you for past service.
Thank you, Ward.
Giving Skippy a moment if he had any follow-up, but I don't believe he might.
No questions on this one.
Thank you, Skippy.
Service.
Thank you.
All right.
That was
That's
tough.
all.
All right, well, thanks. I like your new digs.
Oh,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Coming in, take a look at all the artwork. There's some pretty good local
Well,
artists.
I've been in the city hall, but this was the first time in the chamber, so it's really nice. So good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. Those are the 2 board and applicants that we have on our agenda for this evening. So with that, I will come back to council to move on to our next item.
Okay.
share my slides? Or does it just plug in my?
Did you have the seat?
Oh, because I'm not in the, I'm only like a panel.
What's your name?
Elizabeth Aspen. I'll grab my water. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Excuse me, you're Liz?
Yeah.
Welcome. I don't think we've seen you previously.
Yeah, I was gonna introduce myself, so, one second, let me just get these pulled up. Oh, yeah, go ahead. Okay, great. All right, thanks, Diane. Yeah, we brought copies of the strategic plan in case anyone wants to follow along as we go, too.
Absolutely.
Old shoes, I just, when I dug everything out of my storage unit from 2 years ago, found shoes.
Right. So, to reintroduce myself, because it's been a while, I think Diane and Sarah first introduced me back in July. I've seen Rachel at APSHA meetings, but I'm Liz Axberg. I'm the City of Aspen Housing Policy Analyst. So again, I started in July, and today I am here to just provide a high-level overview of the Affordable Housing Strategic Plan and also give an in-progress update on action items within the strategic plan as well. So throughout, you are welcome to ask questions, clarifying questions, or of any type. So, and Diane is up here with me as well. She can fill in any blanks if needed. So,
This is a personal note. Do you know somebody from Energy Solutions?
are you talking about your daughter? Yeah. Yeah.
I was giving a heads up on
Okay, for anyone else, I have a friend who lives in Austin who works with Ward's daughter, so they met each other. Yeah, I thought that was funny. I've been meaning to tell you about that. But, so first I'm just gonna do some level setting today for anyone in the audience. Affordable housing is one of the council's goals, and one of the first steps in that goal was to create an affordable housing strategic plan, as shown here. This was implemented in May 2022, and while affordable housing efforts had been underway for many years in Aspen, this plan just really laid the action steps, framework, and goals leading up to 2026. So Diane already passed out copies, so you all have this, but it's also now on the City of Aspen website under council goals as well. So the overarching goal of the strategic plan was to deliver a total of 500 affordable housing units by 2026. And this would be units in the Aspen urban growth boundary, achieved through both new development and development neutral approaches as well. Could be private sector, public sector, or by the City of Aspen as well. And so in the strategic plan, 14 different action items were laid out to make this goal possible. The action items are shown here, and they are also, I don't remember which page, but and they were just positioned in order of the amount of affordable housing units that it yielded, and took some other factors into account as well. So today we are going to be going through each of the action items and just giving an in-progress update on that specific action item, and that has been made since the adoption of the strategic plan back in May. Before we do that, though, I do want to acknowledge all of the staff that have contributed to the strategic plan, to ongoing affordable housing efforts through the City of Aspen, and this update today. We all work together to make this possible, and we'll continue working together to review policy, make changes, and come back to you all with updates in the future as well. So a lot of these staff are also here in the audience today, so they will be coming up as needed if you have specific questions about their area of expertise. So the first action item, which is expiring deed restrictions. So as there are 324 units in total in Aspen that have deed restrictions with a sunset date on them, meaning that they have a future date which they will expire. And so this is what the strategic plan actually set as the first priority. And our goal is to just preserve as many of these deed restrictions as possible. So far, 80 units have been removed to the list just because APSHA staff actually found that they were actually in perpetuity already. So that was a good win for us. Along with that, since May, one other deed restriction has been overturned, and that's through just the automatic process that APSHA has. Every time that a house is sold or the deed's transferred, automatically new deed restriction is placed. But we would like to take more actions to address the other couple hundred deed restrictions that are out there. So staff right now are still in ongoing conversation about what incentives and tools we can implement to do this and engage with owners to replace these deed restrictions. So that is still in progress, and I think as that develops, we will be coming back to council as well.
Just a kind of question, but do you have the larger number of the 324 broken down by, potential termination dates of the deed restriction or what, because as we know, some of those are predicated on 21 years after the death of a certain individual or something. So they're pretty far out there in a sense. And based on actuary charts, may or may not need real investment to be taken care of by the processes of time. But do we know others more imminent than that 21 years after a currently living person, and how imminent might some of them be?
Yeah, Cindy wrote a memo that lists out all the expiring deed restrictions with the dates that follow. And we, in our current conversations right now, are talking about how to prioritize because of that. Because some of them are on different timelines. Some of them we have lots of time. Some of them so there's like a lot of different things I think are going to go into the priority list. But that is something we've definitely thought about as well. And it depends on the property.
Right.
But yeah, so there is I forgot when that memo had gone out, but we do have a memo that lists out all the expiring dates, yeah.
Maybe when you have a chance, it'd be great to resend that. Okay.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Next is Lumberyard, which I know you're all really familiar with. I think it was the end of September that council reviewed the Lumberyard development application. So Lumberyard, which is just south of the airport, it includes 287 units in total. As of right now, progress and next steps include that the land use development application was submitted at the beginning of November, so that's checked off the list. And once that review is complete, the next step will be scheduling a public hearing for the project, which will probably happen in 2023. And right now, at the current timeline, it looks like demolition, early construction starting in 2024. The other big, development going on is Burlingame Ranch Phase 3. This is adding 79 new APSHA deed restricted units to that property. So due to construction delays, the project right now is about 85% complete. It's already been announced with the delays for sales. But, and the sales schedule is still tentative, but probably going to happen in 2023. So staff are still just working to complete Burlingame Phase 3, making sure that construction's at the appropriate standards and they'll be ready for sale. So action item 4, community development policy analysis. This action item was aimed to make changes in policy and land use code during the moratorium that would support and incentivize affordable housing further. So the main outcomes for this action item happened in June 2022 with the passing of ordinances 13 and 14. And so both of these ordinances include components that incentivize affordable housing development. And so first, they have now a separate review process for affordable housing projects. This helps expedite affordable housing projects and cut down review time, and thereby the costs also of reviewing those projects for proposals as well.
Liz, let me take 1 second here. I've got a couple of questions for you. I'm going to start with Skippy, who has a hand up online, and then Ward.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate this. Just a kind of guiding comment, I guess. This work has been tremendous, super supportive, so grateful for staff. I think this really sets us up in a new playing field. The first things that I've personally been seeing, and I think the rest of council, has been around HPC projects and just the relative mass and scale relative to the historic element. And so I just, insofar as staff may or may not be looking at that, my perspective is that, you know, the concern is a fair one, but in my mind, to be equitably distributed, if any changes are to be made to reduce the mass and scale of the new structure versus the historic one, that should also apply evenly or more stringently to free market development. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there for staff background.
And then, thank you, Skippy. Ward?
Yeah, thanks, Skippy. Before I go forward, I just want to make sure I'm clear on what you're saying. Are you saying that you want, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but just for clarification, that HPC projects and free market projects should have the same guidelines?
Yeah, I mean, my personal view has been we have seen a number of HPC projects with these sort of massive additions, mostly free market, that dwarf the initial structure. And I've often thought that that should stop. So I just want to, as we get feedback from the public about a specific or a few specific affordable projects, I don't want to take our eye off the ball in recognizing that the majority of these mass and scale issues are not affordable. And if we're going to adjust it, we should adjust it for everything.
Okay, and I think my comments, thank you, Skippy, dovetail with those, and it's on the second bullet point. In our memo under action item 4, and projects of this kind would be limited to the previously established dimensional limitations of the zone district, but would allow additional density in support of affordable housing. So I'm not sure what that means. If the floor area ratio is consistent with what the underlying zoning is, but I know that we would allow, looking to allow 3 or 4 plexes in case where it has been zoned for duplex or single family. So just clarification on that.
Yeah, Ward, I think it's simply, for the record, Ben Anderson, planner with community development. Just for the record, I think it's a matter of terminology for the most part. In planner speak, intensity talks about things like floor area and height. Density is about the number of units. So in terms of intensity, we kept that the same across the city as we sort of made some of the changes. But we did give some flexibility to density in zone districts. So I think it's about terminology. Floor area height, other dimensional standards remain the same.
Okay, so you're just allowing up to 4 units on a lot.
That's correct.
But the same height and floor area ratio.
Yes.
Or floor area. Thank you.
That's correct. Now, just as a caveat to that, because you know, with the topics around affordable housing, we've seen some projects in the RMF and the mixed-use zone districts, which do allow significant more density and intensity than our purely residential zone districts. So along Main Street in the RMF zone district, if it's, you know, in those areas, those have significant density and intensity beyond what's allowed in, say, the R6 kind of residential zone.
That's just the differences that already exist in the
Already
existing
exist.
zones. They
And
were
we
not
didn't-
changes to code.
Did not change any dimensional standards within the land use code.
Thank you.
So, Ben, while you're here, just one more on, Skip, you brought up the subject of HPC, and HPC has the ability to give I think, up to a 250 square foot bonus. So that does change the intensity.
When we're talking about RMF, or we're talking about when we're talking about the mixed-use zone district, because of the additional floor area that's allowed just by right in those zone districts, most projects, just because of the realities of the size of the lot, would not be pursuing a floor area bonus because they have, a more than ample floor area ratio either in the RMF or the mixed use to accomplish a project and still be confined, by the realities of the lot size, et cetera.
But in residential zones where there's a historic asset and it's under review, and for an additional unit to be added or units to be added, there is a possibility for additional floor area.
That's correct under HP guidelines, yes.
Thank you.
Right. I think that covers the density bullet point. And along with this, ordinances 1314 also increased affordable housing mitigation requirements and increased fee in lieu. And the increase in fee in lieu is just increased to reflect the increasing construction costs that we're seeing nationally and regionally. So the next steps really for this action item is continuing to measure the impact of these policy changes and continuing to make adjustments as needed to further their impact. Another action item falls into the Community Development Department is Certificates of Affordable Housing Program and enhancements. So this program has been really effective over the years, but it was launched in 2010, so it's over 10 years old. And since it's been implemented, market conditions have changed, so the program is just going to need adjustments to account for these changes in the market. So most recently, Ordinance 13 also created an administrative review path to issue credits, so this just adds more of a process to receiving credits. And then also, Community Development is working right now with Design Workshop to evaluate possible code changes that will improve this program. And I think in the memo lists out some of the potential changes that they're really pursuing, but there is a work session scheduled for December 12th that is going to discuss the work that Community Development has been doing with Design Workshop and the proposed changes they're looking to make to the Affordable Housing Credits Program. So that's kind of a stay tuned. Updates are coming for that one.
Rachel?
Yeah, thanks. I would just request that for the work session, we have a real overview of the program as well as the changes. I personally need it myself and maybe for the general public to be able to take a look at that. Someone was asking me a question the other day I really couldn't answer, whether the developer of a affordable housing credits program could essentially remain as landlord and not sell the units and things like that. And so I really think an overview would help the conversation with any changes coming forward.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
And I'd like to have the issue of speculation on housing credit units addressed as well.
Yeah, that's something we've talked about before of how long can you keep a project off the market, such as the one over there on the east end of town that's been closed down for 2-3 years, and the developer doesn't need the credits yet, but he bought the project, but, a lot of people were evicted and nothing's coming online anytime soon. I don't know if that is something we'll be addressing now, or that's something we can continue to look at.
Ward, do you mind just unpacking what you mean by speculation in the credits market? That's not a term we use downstairs.
Yeah, the idea that somebody could construct or buy up housing credits and then sell them at a free market price instead of at Category 2 or Category 4 rate, I think in previous discussions, there's nothing to prevent somebody from rat-holing a bunch of credits and then speculating on them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I've got a question from Skippy, and then I have a follow-up as well. Skippy?
Yeah, and there's a lot more detail in the packet on this one about things we're exploring, whether that's city as purchaser, guarantee of time of flip, higher categories. There's a whole bunch. And I'm just wondering if you could give a little bit more voice here to what the things we are exploring are. And then for that next meeting in December, I think, and please correct me all if I'm wrong, but I think what we're hoping to achieve through this is more credits program units being delivered and being delivered in a predictable and timely manner. So it would be helpful at that meeting to know how each of these individual changes or interventions or incentives or whatever would be expected to affect those two outcomes. But I'd love to just hear a little bit more about the stuff that we're all exploring.
Have it here if you need it.
That's okay. That's helpful. Skippy, this is Ben. I think it's a fair question, and I was just starting to put a framework to the memo for the 12th as I was sitting in the audience. But I think it's trying to get at things that you just said. In terms of the larger policy objectives behind these proposed changes. I think we've heard from the development community for years, and more recently in some really targeted interviews, both in the folks that are building projects, but also from folks that are financing projects, to try to make this program that was seen as an incentive to get private developers to develop affordable housing without involving the city of Aspen. I think that was ultimately the purpose of the program when it was crafted. And I think I think as Liz acknowledged at the introduction, the program's been effective to this point, but the market has shifted. The economics of developing affordable housing have shifted. And as a consequence, the way that the whole program, both on the supply and demand side of credits, are working, those dynamics have shifted over time, and we need to respond to those things because the situation in 2022 is different than the situation in 2010 when the program was crafted. And so I think we're identifying mechanisms that bring flexibility and encourage different things than maybe the program originally encouraged. I think we're trying to make the credits more understood as as a tool for a project's pro forma as they're going through financing. That's a thing that we've heard pretty regularly. So a variety of tactics. I do think in the conversation on the 12th, we're going to be asking council for some pretty high-level policy direction on some of these issues as well. But some of these things are just a few words in the land use code that we do think could bring some enhancement to the program. But more to that and more detail on that on the 12th.
Got it. No, I appreciate that. And I know you guys are doing this, so this is not new information, maybe just for the public, but, we've passed some stuff during the moratorium that we just reviewed that we view as really helpful for the community. There's a large part of the development community that views those acts as hostile or constricting. Whether they are or not is irrelevant, but they feel that way. And I think that this credits program piece, the underlying work that we actually did during the moratorium, and the development neutral piece we'll talk about later, can and should be used as an opportunity at those intersections to create systems that will be of benefit to our private development community. Because across the board, when I talk to people, they have to build what their investors will pay for. But if they could be earning the same or more, delivering what the community wants and frankly what they want in the community, I think we have a really cool opportunity to get more housing and flip that that perception that's in that community. So I know you guys are doing that, but I think it's really cool, and I just encourage us to keep going forward that way.
Thank you.
And then only comments from me is going forward, for me, a better understanding of the relationship between the creation of certificates of affordable housing as it relates to development, commercial development, and the offsetting of those mitigations is where I still want to have kind of a fundamental question about this.
All right, we'll continue. There we go. All right, next is developing financial resources for affordable housing. So when the Affordable Housing Strategic Plan was implemented, the estimated cost of building an affordable housing unit was about $1 million. So for us to continue to gain, develop, and sustain affordable housing units, we're going to need the proper financial resources and partners. So that's what this action item focuses on. So the largest advancement in this area would be the short-term rental tax. Since this memo was sent out, this did receive a vote of support and affirms that the city will begin collecting after April 30th. And the estimated revenue for this tax is about $6 million to go towards affordable housing development, acquiring, and maintenance.
Just a quick comment. I think this is accurate and correct for where we are right now. It has struck me, I think the affordable housing statewide ballot question has passed. Is that?
That did.
And, you know, looking at it, it seemed like something that we really, as the city, would not be able to apply for, or APSHA. The 3% a year increase in affordable housing units really, when you already have 3,000 units, gets a little hard to do. So I don't think that's a commitment we could make. But it did strike me that the housing coalition that you've been working on, Diane, throughout the valley, really would be in a position to take advantage of this. And I think we should keep in mind as a board where that's going and what might be available to the Roaring Fork Valley as a whole, and whether we want to make any sort of contribution, or you know, maybe in line with others or whatever, to be able to be what local match may be needed to pull dollars down in the future. But I really see that, and I'm very glad we supported that before, as a potential vehicle to be able to access these funds in a way that relieves the housing situation valley-wide, even if it's not part of Aspen proper, you know, as we see it. So that's one thing I wanted to mention. And then the second is that I think we really need to continue to work with our other APSHA partners, as in the Pitkin County, to see what resources they can bring forward in the future to help resolve some of the greater shortages we're facing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Along with this, other funding is sort of allocated on a project-by-project basis, just depending on where it's at in the development process, how concrete the planning is as well. Like Lumberyard now is very far along in the planning process and is pretty solidified. So staff are going to be able to advance debt issuance for the project probably for 2025, 2026 to make that possible. Lastly, in the financial area, there is a sunset date on the 1% real estate transfer tax. The sunset date is for December 31st, 2040. So eventually, staff are probably going to come to council and then the voters as well to support extending this sunset date, just because this is a very consistent stream of revenue for affordable housing projects, but also it helps us plan for the future as well, to know we have that secure funding for the future too.
John?
Yeah, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to our staff in charge of communications and outreach regarding the short-term rental tax. I think the work they did in the polling was very valuable, and it showed exactly pretty much what the community would support, and the percentages matched that in the final vote. So thanks to staff.
Definitely.
Very good.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess one more financial update also in the realm of the West Mountain Regional Housing Coalition is that back in February, City of Aspen did commit $10,000 to the coalition as well to support affordable housing on a regional level and expand our reach. So we'll be talking more about the coalition a little later too. All right, next talking about voluntary downsizing, or otherwise known as right sizing. So there are about 580 spare bedrooms in the APSHA inventory. And so this action item discusses launching a right-sizing program to decrease this number and just reallocate, maximize the amount of bedrooms in the APSHA inventory. And so this summer, to measure interest, APSHA did send out a right-sizing survey to owners and found around 19% of 3 and 4 bedroom owners said yes, while 41% said maybe. So this shows that there is interest there, but more information was really needed to understand how to make the program successful, how to turn those maybes into yeses, or what a yes really meant. And so we decided the way to move forward with that is to do a pilot program. So this is still being discussed at APSHA right now and being brought into the APSHA board. But right now, staff are sort of suggesting a swap board pilot program for right sizing that would allow owners who are interested in either up or downsizing to find their match and buy each other's homes. And so there would still be rules that apply, like matching category. It would be limited, I think, to 6 households for the first year, or the first pilot program. And so this, I think, is going to one of the next APSHA board meetings.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. I realize it will probably continue to take a little more time, but I still would love to see more of a breakdown of where the spare bedrooms are, you know, because it comes back to people at the North 40 got to design and build their own homes. They weren't required to only build as many bedrooms as the 2 people who were building the home, or same with mobile homes that have been pulled out or were pulled into our system, and it could have been a couple living in a 3-bedroom, but now it's counted as an empty bedroom, and before it wasn't even part of APSHA's inventory. So without those numbers, I just see the 580 as looking like a really big scare number, and I'm not sure how accurate it is in terms of where those bedrooms came from. So I just really would love to use Home Track further and get a better sense of, are they in mobile home parks? Are they in mitigation units that developers built that they were allowed to put a couple in a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom? You know, it just, some of it is obviously empty nesters and people's families change, but how much is one and how much is the other, I just don't know.
Yeah, and I do talk a little bit more about spare bedrooms, well, I will later, but on Thursday's APSHA board meeting, I'm presenting an analysis on spare bedrooms in the inventory, specifically looking at properties that didn't have original minimum occupancy requirements, like the North 40.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
I have a question here. Are there any preventative measures that the board or APSHA has been talking about going forward? I know this is a very difficult topic when you talk about home ownership and, again, you know, empty nesters, changing dynamics within families and such. But do we have anything going forward that minimizes the potential for exactly this, where please, I guess, outgrow might be the wrong word here, but don't create more bedrooms? Or has that conversation come up?
Excuse me, it's Matthew Gillen, the Executive Director of APSHA. Mayor, that comment's not really come up. The way the program is set up, we don't monitor people's assets and their lifestyle afterwards. You know, and traditionally, is you do the 1,500 hours to own your house, you have to not own another house in the owner exclusion zone. But we have been in the business of monitoring people's lives after that. As long as they fill those 3 requirements, we look at their finances, except for in terms of owning investment properties in the owner exclusion zone. And that's been a very deliberate decision by the APSHA board on both sides, the city and the council, that they really don't want to get into this idea that you're looking at people's lives as they continue. And that, I think, Rachel, I'm correct in that it's been a very deliberate decision that we'll look at you when you are right now, but we're not going to be monitoring your life from that. So that would be a very, very fundamental change in the way we do the sales program, and we have not looked at it at this point.
You know, just to add to that, it's fair to say that at the APSHA board, when faced with some of these challenges, comments have been made. I don't know that they've gone anywhere to look at the real impact of saying, well, what if when you buy your home to begin with, you're told it's in the contract that you must move out to somewhere within 5 years of retiring? Or things like that have been suggested that maybe, but then you have to ask yourself all the other questions of why would someone want to buy a home when they don't know where they're going to go to at the age of 65 or 70, and they're in a limited 3% appreciation situation to begin with, and now some of that quote equity is going to have to go into repairing the home before they're told they have to leave. I mean, it really becomes, shouldn't it all be rental and forget that ownership opportunity at all? If you really want to have rules that tell people they need to move out at a certain time. But I will say the second real solution to this is to create a real move to location, you know, where people could say, wow, that's a nice one floor, small first floor, or has an elevator or something for when, you know, and as others have pointed out, it can often be a divorce case. It doesn't have to be seniors who want to move out or who end up with an extra bedroom. But we don't have a good place where people would say, hey, I'd love to move there and sell my 3-bedroom home because I only need a 2-bedroom now. But we don't have that, you know. And that's what, you know, I think we have senior services through the county, and we've had efforts in the past to create a continuing care retirement community, but they just haven't gone anywhere. But that's the missing piece, clearly. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if this is some PR or messaging, but there are voices in our community that feel that owners of APSHA units don't have full rights for privacy, and that they should be told what they could do after they have a contract to purchase 20, 30 years ago. And that the emphasis, I would like to reinforce that people that have purchased homes through the APSHA program have every bit as much right to privacy as somebody in a free market unit, and that their rights of ownership are as strong through a contract as somebody in the free market, and that regardless of what people in the community like to advocate, that those rights are baked into their contracts, and they should rest assured that there's nothing that we can come along and say, well, you've got to move out because you've got 2 extra bedrooms.
And we've tried to be very clear that when we've been talking about this right-sizing program, that it's 100% voluntary, and as you said, we don't have any power or will to make people do it, and we're making that point very clear that it's completely voluntary.
Thank you.
Very good.
Right, partnerships. So City of Aspen staff are always looking for partnership opportunities to allow us to leverage resources, develop, purchase, and attain more affordable housing for our community. Partnerships can just alleviate costs, make it easier. So right now, there are negotiations for the service forest lot. This is located at Hallam Street and 7th Street. And the agreement is still under negotiation right now. But probably for all the partners involved, it'll yield affordable housing units, so that's a success. Otherwise, no other agreements have been reached right now. These really stay confidential until there is close to an agreement or agreement has been reached. So otherwise, staff are just continuing to seek out other potential partnerships we can make. So action item 9 is compliance with APSHA. So while this action item doesn't really necessarily create a number of affordable housing units, it's really important to upholding the program integrity and making sure that everyone in APSHA housing qualifies to be there. And so APSHA does maintain and uphold a compliance and qualification program to ensure that the right people are in APSHA housing. So this includes APSHA does investigate any compliance complaints that they receive, and if If that is found to be verified, they receive a notice of investigation and then a notice of violation if it is a violation. And they are given the opportunity to appeal their case in front of the neutral hearing officer. So that's the standard process APSHA usually does follow. And right now there are 2 cases at this stage of the process where they're seeing a hearing officer. So this includes one with some rental lease violations. So there's another one with a owner owning multiple homes in the ownership exclusion zone. So the largest update to this action item is that APSHA is requesting a compliance analyst in the 2023 budget. So this just allows APSHA to institutionalize compliance practices, another person to review compliance, and also then APSHA just has more time and resources to focus on other policies and things they could be doing to be supporting affordable housing besides compliance.
You know, I would just add, while it's still relatively new, having the hearing officer has really freed up the APSHA board and APSHA staff to be able to really focus on other policy issues and questions. In the past, it seemed, and perhaps even before my time on the board, it was all being chewed up with compliance cases and things like that. And it's much better. I mean, our board could be the first appeal to a decision, or they could go right to court to a decision if people disagree. But that has been a major step forward. And then I would not be able to describe this as fully as Matthew would, but having a compliance officer, I think, is really a critical step going forward for this agency, because the cases get more and more complicated, let's put it that way. And the higher dollar volumes involved, the more complicated and investigative work has to be done. But beyond that, we were kind of splitting Bethany Spitz's time between policy development and reviewing policies, improving policies, and compliance, and the annual verifications. And so you guys have all heard me say before, I thought this was about the most underfunded agency that we had, or department we had in the past. And that was because we were just trying to match what the county felt like it could put in. And so we've kept them understaffed for a long time, and we're just finally getting caught up between moving from paperwork to a computerized system to having more full-time people in charge of some of these things, so we can get to those bigger policy questions. How do we create that move to place or deal with the empty bedrooms? So I really fully support this. I think our board has heard about the need, but this is very important, and good work that's being done. Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is particularly beneficial to the board, that the board doesn't have to be involved in these life decisions. And I think it perhaps is easier to get somebody to volunteer for the board. And I really appreciate that this has gone, the compliance has been taken to the staff level instead of the voluntary board level. Thank you.
And Skippy?
Thanks. Yeah, just wanted to also make the comment about the nexus between compliance and transparency. We've had now 2 compliance reports come through the open APSHA public board meeting, and APSHA is working on figuring out a means of being more transparent with this information that also respects people's privacy. And I just think that's going to be a really important thing for continuing to rebuild and strengthen community trust. So I just wanted to give that a little shout out. And then I actually had a question on item 8 as well, which is just that, you know, we are working on a variety of early stage partnerships. As you said in the slide, you know, most of those are not public. And I know that that is often because the partner doesn't want it, and there's legitimate reasons for some of them, maybe all of them. But I have wondered about the wisdom of sharing versus not sharing on some of those things. And of course, you don't want to like overpromise, underdeliver. But I also think that if the community was more aware of just really the depth and breadth of work in partnership and otherwise, it would have the effect of like building hope and involvement, and maybe even stirring other partnerships. So I don't need an answer right now, but I would really love to get like a, info only or something, just like understanding staff's thinking about what we do and don't share in the partnership realm, and if there's, any opportunities to improve any of that thinking.
Mr. Mayor, if we could maybe meet with Councilmember Mesereau offline, I think I see a lot of confused faces amongst staff, and I think we need to unpackage that a little bit more to understand
Sounds
its
great.
information request. Thanks.
And then this one's through as well, just ongoing efforts to implement policy that can increase the number of mobile units in our inventory. So right side does also underneath this umbrella. Since that has its own item, we already discussed it, we took it off. Otherwise, as I mentioned earlier, we are doing a spare bedroom analysis to find what other variables impact the amount of spare bedrooms in particular properties. And not only is this going to better inform right-sizing policy, but it also might give some insight into what other policies we might be able to pursue to decrease the number of spare bedrooms in the inventory in the future as well. And then also with Home Track, we are now able to monitor this number as well. The biennial ownership survey does ask how many bedrooms are in your home, how many people in your home, and we are doing another survey in 2023, so we'll be able to compare the amount of spare bedrooms from 2021 and 2023 as well, and that'll just continue to give us more information. One other policy change is that buyers can now bid one category above their qualified category, and this just decreases competition for particular units. And so that's just not necessarily increasing the number of available units, but it's just better for the bidding process. Yeah. Questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, and now sustainability for the APSHA inventory. And so this action item does acknowledge the limited number of affordable housing units in our inventory, but also the status of the aging units in our inventory as well. So in order to support the longevity of this program, we are taking steps to assist and incentivize owners to maintain their homes with high construction costs and capital improvement caps. It's hard for owners to sometimes invest in their homes. So there are a few different avenues that APSHA is taking to extend the lifespan of homes in the APSHA inventory. So this includes early stages of conversations about how to properly engage with HOAs and have them pursue capital reserve studies. This is going to play a vital role in the upkeep and longevity of many of the properties. Along with this, upcoming staff is proposing a pilot grant program for APSHA, and this pilot grant program would assist owners in making emergency improvements to their homes, emergency and essential improvements to their homes. And this is just to help alleviate some of the costs associated with that, but that's still yet to be proposed. Similar to this, APSHA has partnered with CoA for a home energy and sustainability program, which has been really successful. The program provides free energy assessments to APSHA owners and also gives grants to fund owners that are making energy efficiency improvements to their homes. So since the program started in 2022, there's been 91 energy assessments done and 7 more scheduled, and they've also given about $95,000 in grants to owners to make improvements on their homes as well. So it's been really successful, and it's still ongoing. I think they exceeded their goal so far on the number of energy assessments, which is great. And lastly, APSHA is also taking steps to continue to improve and mandate a home inspection program. Just ensures that homes are continuing to be kept up to standards.
And that's on resale.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Yeah, and then, and also, so it takes some of the burden off buyers and just make sure that people are taking care of their homes.
I just want to point out, this is your RIMP funds at work.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you, CoA. You know, I've tried to think about where would be the best place in tonight's meeting to mention this, and it's probably this area. And I really appreciate seeing these policies come forward, but I think there really needs to be a lot more work going forward next year. And it's more actually at this council table than APSHA in terms of how we allocate or use some of our housing dollars. But I have long seen a need to create a low-interest, easy-to-access loan fund for people who buy these homes. And the reason is that you've usually put almost everything you have into your closing costs, your 20% down to try to get the best interest rate. But at a 3% appreciation, you won't gain enough equity for the first 5 to 10 years to really even go in for a second trust at a bank or things like that. And we have to have some analysis, and I'm so glad Liz is on board and starting to really dive in on this stuff. But have we set up a structural deficit situation from the very beginning in terms of it cost us $400,000 to build your home, we're selling it to you for $225,000, you get 3% appreciation, simple, not compounded, over a 30-year life, but we expect you to maintain the full cost of the construction, whether it's the roof, the boilers, the windows, or the internal components. And it's just, particularly if you're a longer-term resident, you get to a point where your capital reserves are equivalent to what your annual appreciation would be, let alone trying to repair or upkeep the inside of your units. So I don't know how we all thought this would balance out in the end. The appreciation cap was there to kind of match rising salaries, so these units would be there available to people in that same sort of work frame. But it never took care of what would happen to the physical structure itself. And it does take a lot more analysis. Who would it apply to, when, what, a lot of work. But, you know, we did just see the short-term rental tax pass, and I think that similar to CDOT, it's had to say, let's take care of the roads we have now before we build new roads. We need to look at how we can help fund this better and incentivize people to be able, and make it easy for them to do the work that we'd like them to do. So I just really want to have a future look at this structural deficit, the system that we have set up. Can it work forever? Can it be tweaked? Is there a different way so that people don't believe my 3% appreciation over 30 years is 100% of it's mine, as opposed to how much of it needs to go back into the unit, or vice versa. And it just needs a lot more work. So I want to make sure and I'm passing that along to the board to say this is something we all need to think about, how we use the money and what we allocate some of those dollars for. But if it's always new construction and it's not taking care of what we already have, I think we're missing the boat. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's an identified challenge or problem, and whether it's a loan program or some other way to assist in maintaining the units, improvements or maintaining that you buy at a subsidized price, but you maintain at full market value.
Yeah.
So somewhere in between, some way to encourage maintenance and improvements.
Yeah, I mean, we've had windows where it worked well because people may have bought at a 8% interest rate and then were able to refinance down at 5 and refinance down again. But anyone today looking at, oh, I'm going to go to the bank and get a loan at 7% or 9% for, it's not a refi. So, and knowing that you're only getting 3% appreciation on your original purchase price, how many people are going to go in for that loan and replace anything? It's pretty narrow strip there. Anyhow, thank you all.
Thank you. All right, next, additional development neutral program elements. So when this was first put into the strategic plan, it does state wasn't fully fleshed out quite yet. But it identified the two different types of policies that fall into this area. So first, it's finding more ways to convert free market units into deed-restricted units, but also creating more affordable housing revenue streams to fund these types of efforts. So major accomplishments in this area include converting 1235 East Cooper's 8 two-bedroom apartments into deed-restricted housing. So that's now owned by the school district. And this was really made possible through collaboration between community development and APSHA. So it was great that that could happen. Along with this, Ordinance 13 also supports this action item with changing some of the land use code to incentivize development neutral projects and also centrally located projects. And ComDev is also still working with a design workshop on this as well, finding other ways to remove obstacles to affordable housing development potential as well. And so one other thing is the strategic plan also talks about buy downs in this area as well, because that's a development neutral policy. And while we aren't looking into that right now, West Mountain Regional Housing Coalition is actually looking to launch a buy down program in the next year, which City of Aspen is a part of. And so they are still pursuing funding for that right now and looking into how that program can happen.
Thanks for that. I wanted to make a mention on the buy down program. When we were going through this and setting some of the action items, we purposefully left off buy down from our list because of some of the hurdles that we saw there. It's really great to hear that the Regional Housing Coalition is looking at this on a regional level, which might be more attainable. But I also shared an email with counselors and Sarah, Diane, and I sent it on to Liz as well, that talks about some other types of structures for buy-down programs. I think maybe the traditional model doesn't necessarily lend itself to the Aspen market, but maybe there are some modifications that can be made and a program actually work. Because I think we're all very much in support of the development neutral program as much as we can. So while we did leave it off the list, I think that it's nice that it's naturally and organically coming back into the discussion as much as it can. With that, I've got a hand up from Skippy.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good to see it in there. You know, Aspen's financial situation is not like anywhere else. So, you know, the idea that our buy down program would work like a buy down program elsewhere is probably a fool's errand, but I think there's opportunity. I was just, a nice lady came over to give me an IV so I could try to make this meeting. And, you know, she was just talking about, she's been here for 30 years, bought property, free market, you know, small studio or one bedroom, not sure, but, you know, saw the dollar signs during COVID and sold and didn't really think through, what else could I buy? Nothing. Don't qualify for X, Y, or Z, not enough RO on the market. And so, you know, someone who has been a vital working part of our community for decades is now faced with the stress of everyone at the lower income jobs. And, you know, I think of like business owner after business owner who have told me similar stories recently. So, you know, we're solving for the traditional market and a new higher dollar market if we want to have the full lived in community. And I think this area, development neutral, is the way that we can most effectively get there without cities' existing dollars and in the way that, so far as I can tell, everybody would prefer, which is without, you know, additional development. So I really want to make sure we're looking into this year the vacancy challenge. By our own numbers, 68% free market housing is vacant. That number has been rising precipitously and increasingly for a long time until maybe COVID, when we had this influx. And the truth is we don't really know going forward if that increase in vacancy will continue or not, if it's sort of solving itself, quote unquote. Are those people working? Don't know. I know CAST, you know, did the initial study, mountain migration. They're looking at mountain migration 2. Won't be immediate, but in the next 6 months to a year. So that may be a good place to get some kind of more regional trends. But I think we need to get serious about looking at the vacancy challenge, because it is the single biggest driver of the affordable housing challenge today. Not 20 years ago, but today. I mean, if all of those existing built structures were filled, we'd have way more housing than we needed. And so, looking at the reality of the trends and the data, what incentives could we offer for people to house someone? What fees or taxes could we levy that could fund either a buy down program, which would potentially look like buyer's assistance for existing condos for people at the higher job level but who work here and have been recently priced out in exchange for like an RO deed restriction, right? So forever we get the unit in our inventory, they get the benefit of some appreciation, and it's cheaper all around. And then secondly, at the nexus with 13, how could we use potentially those funds to help backfill the balance sheet for the development community so that they could be coming out financially well, delivering those 3 and 4 plexes in those areas we've made them possible. So that's a long way around of saying I just want to get deeper into really understanding quantitatively the vacancy challenge.
Very good.
Great, thank you. Land banking, similarly to partnerships, is something the City of Aspen staff are consistently seeking out, which is just acquiring and holding land for future development. The most recent property to reach the development stage of this was a lumberyard project. But this past year, staff did do a land search, and they identified 3 different properties that were suitable for purchase, but none of them actually ended up coming into fruition. So the search is just continuing. Right, now the last action item is regional collaboration, which we have touched on a couple times, but great strides have been made in this area with the West Mountain Regional Housing Coalition, formerly known as the Roaring Forks Regional Housing Coalition. So over the summer, they officially received nonprofit status, which was a great success. The Assistant City Manager, Diane, is on the board for the coalition and represents the City of Aspen. So now there are 8 different entities that are part of the board on the West Mountain Regional Housing Coalition as well. And most recently, most of their efforts have been standing up the coalition, securing funding sources, as mentioned earlier, looking to launch a buy-down program, and a lot of their focus is also on development-neutral approaches. But if you're interested in reading more about that, I did send an informational update on October 19th that dives in a little bit deeper on updates for the West Mountain Regional Housing Coalition and the direction that they have been taking. All right. So next steps. It's been 6 months now since the strategic plan was implemented, so we'll probably come back to you with a work session in 6 months that will follow the similar format. But there's also going to be as-needed updates in between that specifically touch on certain action items. For example, the December 12th work session on the Affordable Housing Certificate Program. But that's it for today. So, I mean, if you have any additional questions or want me to go back to an action item, now's the time.
Rachel, and then Skippy.
Great work, Liz and Diane and the whole team behind you, Matthew and Philip and Ben and Chris and everyone who's contributed to this. It's a very solid approach, and we can see us making progress on all fronts. The one thing I think that we need to make sure we have in our work session programmed and have enough time to really look at it is the potential prioritization of our for sale units for individuals who work within the municipal boundaries of Aspen. And it's something that we've talked a bit about, but we don't have scheduled, and I think that a majority of the board was interested in at least having a more formalized discussion about it to see if our program should mirror something like Snowmass Village's program, which already has a prioritization for workers within the village. So that's the only thing I would really add to my other request earlier. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thanks, Rachel.
And Skippy?
Just want to say thanks as well. This is super, super exciting. Just like the comprehensive approach to this challenge is awesome, and we're doing so much. So I want to thank you guys for all of it. It's really impressive, and I want to just invite us to think about how we message this to the community. You know, how actively are we making people aware of this? Because two things are true in my mind. We're doing more than I think any community I am aware of anywhere to solve the housing problem. And the vast majority of these solutions will not actually land in people's lived experience for a number of years. And so I think it's really important that we are actively messaging the fact that this work is happening, but also level setting about the time it will take to delivery. Because, you know, in lieu of that active messaging, people will think that the problem is, well, they won't think the problem, it will be getting worse, but they'll think it's because of lack of action, which could actually hamper our ability to continue to do this work. So I think we just need to be mindful and active about our communication and our clarity with the realistic time of delivery.
Thanks, Kibbe.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo other people's expression of appreciation for all the work that the whole team has done. It's been a joint effort and work worth doing. Thank you.
Thanks, Ward. John, any comments?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to all the staff. Like, we're all very grateful to every one of you for doing this. I think I'm also grateful for the people who came before us that started this program, because we are truly just standing on the shoulders of giants. And I'm pleased to keep this ball rolling forward. And as Skippy said, I do think this is the community that's doing the most to house their employees across the country. So thanks.
Amen to that standing on the shoulders of giants comment. John, you couldn't have said it better. I completely agree. I feel really grateful for that.
Thanks, John. Re-echo, thank you so much. As I look back over the last few years, I think that this work is some of the best work that we've done to literally get everybody on the same page. So it's great. It's also a really wonderful roadmap moving forward. We are very fortunate for what has gone on here in our valley with affordable housing and the efforts there and the successes there. But I do feel like some of the refinements that we're making, some of the new opportunities that we're pursuing are going to pay off in spades. We're really going to make improvements that are going to return housing to our community, return trust to our housing program, and more benefits. But let's both exercise our patience as well as our prowess as we move forward. There's some really complex, complicated questions to answer throughout this. And if we all continue to collaborate and work together, we can get to those best practices and best solutions. It's exciting. I'm glad we're where we're at. It's been neat. Through this Affordable Housing Strategic Plan, we've identified a lot of opportunities, but we've also identified a lot of our challenges. And so I think it's really great, and I'm really proud of all of us that we are taking on those challenges and looking to make improvements where we think we can. So thank you to council. Thank you to staff. John?
Hey, I just wanted to add this briefly. I also think, in addition to all the construction that we're doing and everything else that we're trying to accomplish, I think the steps that have been taken, hiring a compliance officer and saying that nobody's going to be forced to move out of their unit, or that takes a lot of the fear out of the community about what APSHA is about. And I think the efforts at transparency are also very important at this point in time. So great steps forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Anything more, Diane? Do you need anything from us?
No, thank you, and thanks to Liz. She's doing an awesome job. It's stunning that it's less than 6 months, and she's already done a lot of great analysis and did today's presentation. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Liz.
Everyone.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right.
That will conclude our work session for this evening. We are back. City Council has a regularly scheduled meeting tomorrow at 5 p.m. And as always, we take citizen comment and petition at the beginning of our meetings. So please, if you have comments, questions, suggestions, or anything else for City Council, join us tomorrow at 5 p.m. Thank you, GrassRoots.
Thank you.